The Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. You may have noticed that energy policy and climate change, one of the greatest issues facing human survival today, have not been at the forefront of this year's presidential election. It is only over the issue of jobs where energy policy did get a brief mention during the second presidential debate. This is when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were asked about their energy policies, and they both chose to focus in on how to save dying coal industry jobs, but did not provide much detail on what they would actually do to solve the problem. A major new report from the Political Economy Research Institute titled "The Economics of Just Transition: A Framework for Supporting Fossil Fuel-Dependent Workers and Communities in the United States" by Bob Pollin and Brian Kalachi. This report provides many solutions. It details a plan for how jobs and energy transition is viable while reducing the greenhouse gas emissions outlined by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Joining us now to discuss this transition plan is one of the co-authors of the paper, Bob Pollin. Bob Pollin is a distinguished professor of economics and co-director of the Political Economy Research Institute, or PERI, at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He's the author of several books, including Greening the Global Economy. Bob, so good to have you with us.
Always great to be on. Thank you, Sharmini.
So, Bob, let's start with your proposed framework for supporting fossil fuel-dependent workers and the communities at large. Just give us an overview.
We looked at three basic considerations: jobs for the workers who are either in the coal industry, oil and gas, or the ancillary industries such as support industries for oil and coal, refining, and pipeline and natural gas distribution, and electric utilities. So we looked at those. So we looked at the number of job losses, and then we looked at how to get people into better jobs, or at least as good a jobs, starting in the clean energy industry that's going to expand. Number two, we look at protecting the pensions for the workers who are going to be reaching retirement age over the course of the transition to a green economy. In fact, what we show is that you can cover most of the job losses through contraction in oil, coal, and natural gas and ancillary industries. You can cover most through the attrition by retirement. In fact, we find that about 80% of all job losses can be covered by attrition through retirement, but then you have to make sure that the pensions are fully protected. So we do that. And then the third thing is we look at the communities that will face significant impacts and how we can either cushion the impacts or get the communities actually revived through alternative investment strategies.
All right, so let's dig into each of these. Let's take up the retirement plan and viability of it. How much is this going to cost us? And does this essentially mean early retirement?
No. What we're talking about is retirement at 65. Now, it's not legally required that people retire at 65, but we're assuming that people are going to want to retire at 65. Most of them will. So what we show is that we look at the age distribution of people currently employed in oil and gas or those ancillary industries. And we say, okay, looking at the age distribution, if we think about a 20-year transition wherein oil, coal, and natural gas are cut by between 40 to 60% over that 20-year period, we find that roughly 80% of the people are going to be able to, the job cuts can be covered by people retiring. So, that's a pretty solid result. Now, then we say, well, that still does mean that roughly 20% are going to lose their jobs, and those are going to be younger workers. So what we say in the paper is we are going to guarantee those people jobs in the growing clean energy sector. If need be, the guaranteed jobs in the public investment in the clean energy sector. We're going to guarantee them jobs. We're going to guarantee them that their pay will not be cut at all. If there is a differential in pay between the new jobs and old jobs, they will have insurance to cover that. That they will get the necessary training so that they can move into these new employment opportunities without too much trouble. And we're going to cover relocation for people that, younger people that may have to move. So if you add all those things together, what we're finding is that somewhere, $200 million, $300 million a year at most is going to cover all of that. Now that's a lot of money, but it's actually, a minuscule fraction of, what we spend every year on energy, on fossil fuel energy. So it's easily affordable.
And give us a sense, if you are a worker in the fossil fuel industry now, imagine what you would go through in terms of this transition, retraining, possibly relocating, and so on. It seems abstract for people, but you're saying it's possible. Who would do the training? How would this transition happen if you're an individual?
Yeah, well, again, and we recognize that just putting it down on paper does not capture the human drama, the trauma that people face when they lose their jobs and have to find new jobs. So, and I've been in discussions with different groups and so forth that tell me, oh, you're giving us a bunch of numbers, you don't know what it is like for real. And of course, I'm not talking about, I can't possibly know what it's really like. But I'm trying to create an environment in which the transition is just, is as easy to undertake as possible. So what we are talking about. So what we're saying is that, most of the people are going to move out of the oil and coal industry through retirement. So they will never have to lose their jobs. They do have to have guaranteed pension. The other people, so, we build in wage insurance. So we're taking account of that. So we are saying you will not experience any pay cut at all. At all. You are guaranteed a job. So it's not just like another training program. Now we already have the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program in the United States, which is for workers that supposedly lose their jobs through changes in trade policy in the United States. That program has been derided for years as so-called burial insurance for workers, because they say, okay, you get $6,000, we're going to help you out. There's a training program now, stop bothering us, and good luck finding a job. What we're saying is you're guaranteed a job. The guarantee is going to be firm because we're going to say the investments in green energy, the public investments in green energy are going to stipulate that workers that have been displaced through contraction in the fossil fuel industry will have priority jobs.
Right. And further, Bob, you argue that a transition from fossil fuel to renewable clean energy actually means an increase in employment levels, particularly if some of these workers are going to be retrained into a new industry. Give us a sense of the investment that will take in terms of the transition, here I mean the retraining, and then of course creating these new renewable jobs.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to take climate science seriously, that at a minimum, my research, which is consistent with other people's research, my research says that we in the United States have to be investing on the order of $200 billion a year to build up clean energy and energy efficiency in the United States, if we're going to have any chance at all of hitting the emission reduction targets stipulated by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now, if we take that $200 billion per year number, and even if we say, okay, we are going to take every single dollar of that $200 billion, we're going to take it out of the fossil fuel industry and put it into green energy. Now that's, not plausible. That's not really going to happen, that every dollar, but let's say it is. What we find is, yes, there's going to be cutbacks in fossil fuels, but the net increase in employment is going to be on the range of 3 million jobs per year. So 3 million jobs per year by building up the clean energy sectors in the United States. Now, what are we talking about in terms of job losses in the fossil fuel industry, the workers that need to be transitioned? Well, on average, over a 20-year period, we're talking about something like less than 3,000 jobs. So we've got 3 million jobs getting created through new investments, and through the contraction of the fossil fuel industry, we're talking about having to find new jobs for something like 3,000 workers a year. So it is obviously something that can be handled through even a minimal investment in the well-being of these displaced workers.
Right, Bob, both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders presented their own plans for a transition to clean energy, but at significantly higher cost. Now, you estimate your whole program to be around 600 million per year. What is the discrepancy here? What's the difference?
As far as I know, the discrepancy is that they just made the number up. I looked at their websites, and of course, I was very interested to see their numbers, but they aren't actually developed, at least as far as I know. I haven't seen any document which says this is how we derive this number. Now, that's fine. That's political campaigns are not, research seminars, and we understand that. But we actually have done the research. And so what we found out is, the $600 million a year, roughly, if we do that over 20 years, we're talking about $12 billion. Hillary Clinton's platform talks about giving $30 billion to cover just this issue of just transition for the communities and the workers. Bernie Sanders had a number that was $41 billion. So, even though those numbers, I can't see where they derive them, at least what they are conveying is that the Democratic Party candidates are talking about numbers that, if actually deployed, could do the job, could create a cushion for workers and communities that are going to be hit by the transition to green energy. So, what we've come up with a number, it's 12 billion. So it's, a third of Hillary. And we're saying that we think that this is a viable program that can work.
And you also argue that this is actually going to create more jobs.
Yeah, well, the green investments will create something like 3 million jobs. The contraction of the fossil fuel industry is going to mean, something like 15,000 jobs lost per year, but of those 15,000, something like 12,000 are going to be covered by people retiring or being at retirement age. And that's why we're only having to find good alternative employment for something like 3,000 workers. Now, let's say our numbers are wrong, and let's say the decline is not steady, and that there's coal mines that just shut down, and it's not going to be 3,000 at one time. It could be 6,000. It could be 12,000. We do factor that into our analysis. Of course, it becomes a little more expensive, because then we have to spend more money at a given time finding jobs for people and training them. But that then also means that in subsequent years you spend less money. So we do try to factor in these kinds of potential shocks of big job losses.
Right. And Bob, finally, when we think of this kind of transition, it just seems so overwhelming. But you have some very serious policy recommendations and a transition plan that is quite viable. Is there anyone listening? Are they calling on you to explain your plan here?
I was very pleased as soon as our paper, we just posted our paper about a week ago. So I don't know if I'm allowed to, or if it's appropriate for me to mention names, but I will say that there's some people in Congress associated with the Progressive Caucus in Congress that are already looking at it very seriously as a way to introduce legislation. In addition, I am working with environmental groups and labor groups in 2 states, in the state of Washington and the state of New York, about implementing these kinds of measures as they apply in those states. So there is a lot of interest, and the reason is clear, because we have to stop burning fossil fuels. We must. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump says. It doesn't matter what Hillary Clinton says about fracking. We have to stop burning fossil fuels, and at the same time, we have to provide a just transition. We have to create decent opportunities for the workers in the communities who will be hurt by the contraction in the fossil fuel industry.
All right, Bob, I thank you for the great work you've done here, and looking forward to having you back very soon.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.